Yeah, sometimes in my experience, I've just witnessed some community leaders, politicians, just display their ignorance and prejudice against male sex workers, against drug addicts, against individuals with problems. I think that one common denominator I've seen in almost all of our guys is that none of them have a particularly good father. If you talk to any of our guys, Jonathan, Jimmy, Mike, Diamond, their fathers weren't there for them, and that goes for myself. And I don't think that's a coincidence that most of the guys grow up feeling misguided or abandoned. And it's no surprise that they end up turning to drugs and end up in this kind of life.
When I was about 16, I dropped out of school and began just using drugs full time.
I lived in, a nice house, white picket fence. Everything looked great from the outside looking in. And then you got behind the closed doors of the house and everything was in shambles.
I was actually born, my mother was a prostitute, my father was a pimp. I actually was even born addicted to crack cocaine. My grandmother would have to take me to the hospital once a month as a baby. I don't know exactly what they did, but like wean me off of, that addiction.
I got introduced to the streets of Providence and started hustling in one form or another. When I was about 17, I was introduced to sex work for the first time. And it seemed like a pretty good deal to me. A man had pulled up in a car and approached me and offered me like 40 or 50 bucks to go have sex with him. And at the time, I had a physical addiction to opiates, to heroin, and I took him up on that offer.
When I was 16 years old, going on 17, my mother's door got kicked in because I was selling drugs out of the house, and I went away. They let me go to a juvenile institution, like rehab. Stayed there for a year. And I got out, I did the right thing. I stayed clean for about a year and a half. I went and got my own place. I did all the right things in life, but then, it started to dawn on me that I was only 18, 19 years old, and I had my whole life ahead of me, and there's no way I was gonna stop, drinking and drugging before I even turned 21 years old.
I ended up selling drugs because I was so tired of jumping in and out of cars and like selling my ass, because I've honestly been selling my ass like since I was 14. So I was just really kind of like, I began to like feel like this disgust, like the same disgust that everybody would like kind of like look at me with disgust, like when I would like kind of just glorify my escorting and male sex work and stuff like that, with like in that defense mechanism. Like I began to feel that disgust and kind of be like, oh, like, what am I doing to myself?
I've never sold sex and not gotten high. I've never gotten high and not ended up selling sex. Rich and I began holding peer support groups, and I found it really therapeutic to talk to somebody about those issues that I faced, because I never had. And maybe I had mentioned them to people before, but they didn't, there was no connection there. It was, you can sit there and you can tell somebody your story and you can tell somebody your struggles, but to somebody sitting behind a desk or a clinician or even just somebody else in recovery that hasn't been specifically there, there's just, the connection isn't there.
While I was on parole, semi doing the right thing, I was a volunteer because I had changed my life around. When I was doing the right thing and I helped someone else change their life and now they want me to be a part of it, so why would I really want to go back out there? When there's no love, there's no hope, there's no joy, there's no nothing. I have all that in this room, in the people that are associated with this place.
push on a message of hope and risk reduction, because, I've seen as much risk as there is, probably, and I've been a victim to, most of the risk, so it's like, why not, push that message of hope and that message of safety,
And so invisible that you can't really see it with the naked eye. It's only through talking with these people that you will understand how they got in the situation that they're in. A lot of times people say, Rich, how many male sex workers are there in Rhode Island? And there's no way to tell, only because so many variations of what a male sex worker is, and we're primarily working with the ones who are addicted to drugs and using the money to support their addiction. Just in the last year, we've been able to get 148 clients enrolled into Project Weber, 15 tested for HIV, but there's so many more out there.